welcome back to the Wolverine Live. I'm John Borden here with Tom Crawford. You know him from Sunday nights, his press pass crew. You know him from his own podcasting company doing some awesome takes in and around the Lansing area where he makes his home. And you also know him every week here talking about Michigan football. We've been talking about Michigan football for 9 solid months without Michigan football, and here it is.
John, you know how football players say, yeah, they're tired of hitting their own guys and everything like that. You know, they want to play somebody else. You know, I want to have a Wolverine Live when we're talking about what happens between the lines in an actual game. And so next Tuesday at 5:30, I'm going to be in heaven, but I'm still super fired up about today because we're just a few days away from going down to Ann Arbor, see up there in the press box, and college football starts Thursday. I mean, it already started this weekend. I got fired up watching USC and San Jose State and hearing Fight On. And I'm into college football. So this is it's all good from now on, JB.
Well, no reason why not. And a lot of things became real for me on Monday because you had Jim Harbaugh standing up there and not talking about the game right away, talking about revenue sharing for players, and we're going to get into that a little bit, but also talking about his suspension, talking about we knew about the plan for the head coaches to come from the ranks of the assistants, but it all became very real yesterday because you had Jesse Minter up there in front of that crowd of reporters saying about all that this meant and all that Jim Harbaugh means to this team and the way that he has ordered all these things and how excited he was that Jesse Minter was going to be able to direct this crew on a game day, put on the headset of the head football coach and get that experience and get that that exposure in that position. And you also had Jim Harbaugh standing up there talking about, some people feel like this is a slap on the wrist that I'm going to miss 3 game days. And he's talking about it. No, it's more like a baseball bat to the knees. And that made me think about it. It made it more real because you might be inclined to say, big deal. It is just 3 game days against lesser non-conference opponents. But when you heard Jim Harbaugh put it in his own words and what it would mean to miss those 3, it hit home.
Yeah, I remember 1984 Michigan State game, the 19-7 loss, and Thomas Tyree speared him. Should have been illegal, but it wasn't at the time, and he's out for the season. And I remember him being carted off. I was sitting relatively low, and the expression on his, he just looked horrified. I mean, he's such a competitive guy. He was then, he is now, and I loved it. You were there at Schembechler or at Townley yesterday, and I'm actually really getting into how Jim is approaching these issues, if you will, in college football. And that started 4 years ago, Big Ten Media Days, when he proclaimed about he was the first to voice one-time transfer idea that ended up evolving into the transfer portal, all the good and bad with that, and the pluses and minuses and all the 1099s, you got all that stuff. And then he talks about revenue sharing. And I was old school on this, John, and have been for a long time. Especially as a regular student going and paying the education, out of pocket, and the football players get it for free. They earned it. I said that then, and they earn a scholarship now, and they earn a lot more. In particular, when you got those executives, and a couple of them I talked to at Big Ten Media Days from NBC that. My God, there's a lot of money to be made, and it needs to be shared. And I every time Harbaugh gets into this pulpit thing, I'm all over it. Bringing out his binder, that's when he's at his best. And so as much as I've been critical on and off, and then praised Jim Harbaugh, I'm giving him a huge bravo how he handled that yesterday.
Yeah, I'm hearing him, and I'm hearing some of Lloyd Carr in him because Lloyd was always an advocate for players getting more than just the basic education. And I always, I struggled with that early on because, having known Bo Schembechler like I did, and having it, you hearing about, you get the grant and aid, and you get a Michigan education, and that's what you get. And you come here and you better yourself and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that I do completely understand what Jim Harbaugh is talking about, because the millions, and in some cases the billions he's talking about with all the TV money and all of this. But I still have my worries about how this is going to affect players and motivations and all the things surrounding college football. I didn't think it was the time and the place yesterday, but had I asked him a question, it would have been, what do you do then when you put this through and it's just for football players, and all of a sudden you've got 28 or 30 other sports in any given school saying, wait a minute, whoa, what about us? Why aren't we getting revenue sharing? And I mean, the obvious answer is because you are not bringing in those TV contracts.
Hello, exactly.
But I'm not convinced at all that you will get a court that will go along with you, or that you might not get a court that says, no, if you're gonna give them out, you gotta do it for everybody.
Well, it's like the court, and when this comes to fruition. So what he's talking about, I see just like in 2019 to 4 years away. When that contract in the CFP goes, that gets torn up in 2025. When the NCAA goes down the tubes in a couple of years, when I'm projecting, that's when this stuff is going to happen. And you're going to have your power schools. They're going to have this kind of structure and ability to revenue share. Yeah, because they're making so much freaking money. I mean, John, I go back to 1997. I remember I was at the Final Four in Indianapolis at the old RCA Dome, and I looked over and I saw all these guys in suits, right? Sitting between, right behind the benches. They had all the great seats. They were making all the money, and it was the players that were making the money for them. That was almost like this visual metaphor. This was in 1997. This is a long when Arizona beat Kentucky. And I was sitting, it just dawned on me in that time. And that's when I started to really open my mind. And that was a long time ago, a little bit more, that these guys are making money of these guys and on the floor and all that other stuff. And, I think the time is right. And we're at a really crossroads in intercollegiate athletics. And I just think Jim Harbaugh's pulpit is going to have as much impact as any.
Yeah, well, and I've heard some people say that maybe that's why the NCAA is going after him so hard.
Exactly.
Tweaking the NCAA.
Yes, you're right. It's gonna be It's gonna be great for Wolverine Live at 5:30 with John Borton and Tom Crawford. We are never gonna run out of content.
What about the human element in this thing? I mean, for the issue that we just talked about, there were Jesse Minter and Cam Good and some of these players that were talking about all that Jim Harbaugh has done to go to bat for the players and how they feel he has their back. Without question. There's a great loyalty there that comes through. And then you had Jim Harbaugh talking about, hey, you can call this a slap on the wrist. You can call it whatever you want. This is tough. This is tough. Yeah. Talk about what you think Jim Harbaugh will be feeling on Saturday when his team runs out, maybe his best team in the 9 years that he's been head coach, runs out on that field, 110,000 people in the stands, going crazy, and he is not leading them out there.
Yeah, the hay's in the barn. He's put the hay in the barn. He's done an incredible job with his team the last few years. Incredible job with this program. Here rumblings he might go watch his son Jack's 10-year-old son Jack Pop Warner football game. I can't imagine that. I mean, it's going to be a weird day, and the same thing's going to repeat itself the following Saturday and the following Saturday night with Bowling Green. Then it's over with, at least for now. But back to what you're commenting about being a the players coach thing. And we heard it in Indy. You hear it all the week. We hear it in post game about how you can get a feel for how Michigan football players feel about Jim Harbaugh and that entire staff. And that starts with Jim Harbaugh and the ultimate players coach. When he's hitting these issues, I mean, think about it when he's recruiting now. I mean, when he goes into a living room. I mean, he can stick his chest out and actually show evidence that he is indeed a players coach, maybe than anybody else in college football. Because I don't hear anybody else coming out and speaking on the players' behalf. I hear Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, or anybody else, talking about it. So maybe they will. Maybe they will chime in, because this could be a huge recruiting advantage for Jim Harbaugh and Michigan moving forward as a quote-unquote players coach.
No question. But if they came in now, they'd be followers. I mean, Nick Saban, I could hear him asking for revenue sharing for the coaches, but
Exactly.
I don't know about the players. And plus would be those who would argue Alabama has a pretty high payroll anyway. So it's one of those deals where Jim Harbaugh is a trailblazer and a groundbreaker in this area more and more, and he's not afraid to go up there with his little notebook and say, "Look, I'm going to tell you the way I see things and the way I think things ought to be, and regardless of the consequences and regardless of who doesn't like it."
Yeah, and I do like what he's done with his staff. As far as the assignments, giving out other opportunities or multiple opportunities, for leadership on this team in these first 3 games, including Kirk Campbell calling the plays. I mean,
yes.
That's a big job. I mean, he was an analyst a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And granted, it's East Carolina, but there's a lot of focus on Michigan. Everything they do is going to be under the microscope. I mean, you're going to get more potential bad PR for Michigan these next 3 games just because of the situation of Harbaugh, a lot of Harbaugh haters, the schedule, which has obviously been a glaring issue, and then just the replacements and can they meet that expectation? So yeah, a lot of pressure, but I think once the whistle blows and this team is well prepared. You can tell this team is well prepared and they want to hit somebody else in their own teammates.
Yeah, no question about it. And I will be the one to take on more enemies at this point and say, I love the schedule. I love it from the standpoint that you are going to have, you can easily do this situation with the coaches. You can have Jesse Minter be your head coach the first week. You can have Jay Harbaugh in the first half of the second game, and Mike Hart in the second half of the second game. You can have Sharon Moore head coach the third game. You can sustain some camp injuries in the among the safeties and other spots that we are going to talk about, and still have a high level opportunity to know that you're going to win that first game. You can get a lot of players onto the field. You can get them grounded, all of which you can do without hurting yourself down the road, which that was a concern last year. And Michigan still had plenty of chance to prove itself against the Penn States of the world and Michigan State, and certainly Ohio State at Ohio State, Iowa on the road. I get it from the standpoint that, but what about the fans? What about these games that they would love to see? And why not it's going to be here in years to come, Oklahoma, Texas, those types of games. I think this schedule is really good for this team, and I still contend that fans, even fans that go to the games, would rather see your biggest games at the end of the year as opposed to the beginning.
But you basically just describe this is a de facto practice, then, is what you're saying. I mean, it's like a scrimmage. Let's be real. And this UNLV team come up, I strongly disagree with you, respectfully disagree with you. I think it's bad football, and it's changing next year. And then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you got USC and Oregon and all these, and UCLA and Washington amongst the teams. And so that's why I'm glad. I want big time games. I think, you're not going to be able to measure anything, John, when you're playing this level of competition, when you're that good. But when you're injured and you want to just get guys in, in a scrimmage like a preseason game in the NFL, fine. Then I agree with you.
All right. I will say this about East Carolina as we move to talking about them. Lost to NC State by 1 point last year. Beat BYU at BYU. Lost by 2.
Yeah, that's the best team of 3. You're right.
Absolutely. I think they could get a little bit of a challenge here for a while in this first game. But I will say this, I don't want to dwell too long about the schedule business because we've talked about that. But next year, even though you've got 12 teams in those in the playoff, then the cutoff line, I think, becomes between 2 and 3 losses. And are you going to schedule super hard in the non-conference, knowing that you may have a conference schedule? It will include Ohio State. It could include USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington. I mean, I think you prove what you need to prove within the scope of the Big Ten at this point, and you don't schedule crazy hard outside of the non-conference or outside of the conference.
Yeah, but when you're in a 12-team playoff though, John, and schedule is going to be an issue. I mean, this has hurt teams in the NC2A tournament when you have a Cream Puff City at the in your non-conference play. Tom Izzo works his magic, pixie dust by just playing tough teams, and he's got a reputation. He's always going to be in the tournament. He's on a bubble. He's in. Why? Because he plays tough teams. And I think you just learn so much more about your team, and it's about competition. It's truly about competition. And I'm going to go back to the fans because when those tickets, last year's Michigan State game was $175 or whatever it is. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money to commit. Like 2 tickets for $350 base value. I know that's the premium game, but still, I mean, that's a very high level commitment to go to a college football game. It's expensive, and if I was a fan in the stands, I wouldn't do it anymore. I just, it's ridiculous. Unless you get better competition, and they will. So it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, I think you make a great point there. We're going to take a real quick break, and then we're going to move ahead to talking about on the field football, East Carolina coming up. But first, we want to have a little shout out to one of our sponsors. Simple question, guys. Is your daughter's engagement ring bigger than that of your wife? If the answer is yes, great news. Lewis Jewelers can help. It's stress-free and easy working with one of their non-commissioned expert trusted advisors, finding that perfect diamond. So stop by today, guys, and fix this family issue. Lewis Jewelers, your diamond store, and so much more since 1921. Visit them at their new location, 300 South Maple Road, Ann Arbor, or online at lewisjewelers.com. That's LEWISJEWELERS.com. And Tom, when we talk about East Carolina, I mentioned some of the close games that they had last year. You talked about them as the best of the 3 that Michigan's going to face. You don't really want to be in a situation in this game where you get to midway through the second quarter and it's a 1 touchdown game either way, or there's a blocked punt or a fumble or something that happens in East Carolina all of a sudden is up by 3.
Yeah.
2 reasons. That does nothing but feed these the hopes and the upset hopes of East Carolina, who's thinking, hey, it happens. We've played in the same arena as App State. App State came up here and did it. Why not us? And on the Michigan sideline, you could get a little of that. What the heck's going on? We're supposed to be fighting for the national championship here.
Yeah.
So I think it certainly behooves Michigan to jump on this team either way.
No question about it. You're exactly right. You look at these games. Well, I'll give you an example. At week number 0 last week, San Jose State goes to Coliseum and plays USC. Okay. Now, San Jose State's kind of like an East Carolina. It's one of those teams you got to watch out for. You know what I mean? They're out in the West and American Athletic for East Carolina, but in Mountain West. But the thing of it is, it's a first half thing. A lot of times these group of fives in game 1 or game 0 last week can hang with them for a while. They're only down USC 21-14 at halftime. And because USC's secondary is pretty weak, I noticed. But all of a sudden what happens in the second half, things unravel. That ended up like a 56-28, whatever. And so things get, kind of erode away real quick. So I do think that East Carolina could, because it's that first game jitters and everything. And you got some players that are going to be playing in this game with this injury bug, not a severe injury bug, but I think a Will Johnson's going to be sitting out of this game. He'd be starting against a better team, but he's got some nagging things and things that people are working out, including a couple of new wideouts. And so we've talked about that this week. So, there's going to be some guys in there that including Josh Walsh hasn't been on the field. There's going to be nerves, and that's what happens, and expectations. So, it could be a little dicey in the first half, but when push comes to shove, when this offensive line, the big difference between the group of five and the power five is the interior line of the offense and defense. That's the difference maker, because everybody has at least a couple of skilled guys who can make a play, make an explosive play. And all of a sudden, that's what App State did with Michigan. They made these explosive plays. And all of a sudden, like, wow, everybody starts getting nervous, and look what happened. So, but I think I got Michigan. I'll give you the heads up. I got Michigan 52-10 in this game. I think that they might give a score or two, and it might be interesting for a quarter, but I think Michigan's easily wrong.
All right. Well, I tell you what, there's Tom Crawford weighing in on the route early in the week, and I will say this, that have both of your starting safeties possibly on the sidelines.
Right.
That's something to watch right there. We're hearing that Keon Saab is, a young guy that's been stepping up, and he may be a person that is going to be able to help you, and he's going to be in a starting role in this game. I mean, talk about something that you'll keep an eye on. That would be one right there.
Yeah, the secondary, this is where that front line, the front seven, actually the front seven looks, between the rotation of the edge rushers that Michigan's going to have, that front seven, obviously led by Chris Jenkins and Mason Graham up there and Jalen Harrell. I mean, I think what the quarterback pressures are going to help Michigan's secondary significantly against a team like this. And yet, turnovers can come into play. I'm knocking on wood all over the place about injuries. That scares the hell out of me. I don't want any more of those because that happens enough in friendly fire in practice, and you don't even have to have a contact injury to do that. But the biggest thing I'm interested in is how Michigan approaches offensively in a game like this. Are they going to, just grind this thing out? And you got the two best running backs in the country. They're terrific tandem going at it. Howard Griffith just went on and on against Donovan Edwards yesterday. He gave him everything but the Heisman Trophy on Big Ten Network. And so you're going to see that. And then what are they going to allow JJ to do in terms of downhill threat on, RPO? Are they going to throw that nugget in there? Or are they going to have him throw? You don't want him to throw too much. You're going to get sacked and get hurt. And then those young wide receivers, there's been some injuries there, although it's a deep position. So I'm intrigued as hell going to the game on Saturday. Don't get me wrong, John. It's going to be, I want to see how good Roman Wilson is. There's so many things to look at. So despite, this is a sure bet win pretty much for Michigan, it's going to be intriguing as hell to go.
Yep, no doubt about it. I think there's a lot of things to watch, a lot of things to pay attention to on both sides of the football. There's a different head coach on the sidelines. A lot of intrigue. There are new scoreboards to look at, and
are those going to be functioning? Are those functioning or not? I mean, what is this? Is this going to be a nagging injury? Something they're working out? How the kinks are going to get worked on the scoreboard? Or we have to wait for the
scoreboard's working through something? Is what Tom Crawford is asking. Yes, I've heard it both ways, and I guarantee you that if you're one of those workers on those scoreboards, you're doing everything in your power, or the people directing them, to have them ready, have it go on Saturday. So we're always ready to go on this particular broadcast, in part because of our sponsors. We introduced another one last week. That would be Susie Surma with Modus Realty. Are you ready to buy a new home? If this is one of, if not the most expensive purchases you'll ever make, having a realtor who listens and cares about your needs is crucial. Susie Surma is the right local expert for you. Susie includes a free buyer's guide consultation to uncover your home buying needs, maximizing experience and efficiency. Email her today at susie@modusre.com, MOTUSRE.com. Let's face it, the market has been challenging for buyers. The critical piece you might be missing is having the right agent. Using a realtor that has superior knowledge and negotiation skills is a key to closing on the home of your dreams. Local expert Susie Surma is your answer. Not only does she know the area, she's a fierce negotiator. Why not build equity now? Contact Susie Surma to start your customized home search today. Call Susie at 248-767-5633 or email her susie@motusre.com. And now we are back, and we are talking Michigan football. And Tom Crawford, I just, as I look at this opening game, I think about the all the hype, I guess, all the expectation for this season. And I'm just wondering if Michigan can live up to all of this. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they can. And, I had on our Press Pass show, we had Fox 47, our mutual friend Larry Lage was on the show, okay, from AP. Sits in the number one seat there in the press box. And you know Larry a long time and he was talking about the reputation this football team has in the city of Ann Arbor. All the merchants, all the people that live in the town. They say that this is the nicest, just respectful, cordial, solicitous, grounded young men on this football team. This is a high character football team. And it's also a football team that has great leadership. My God, they got 6 captains, right? Remember, Indy, we were trying to figure out the captains. We're sitting around the table and we're figuring out they have to have at least 10, right? And they could have had 30. That's the kind of team. This goes beyond. When I'm looking at the depth chart, I go, wow, look at that. Look at those 2s. My God, that two was a starter last year, and now he's a 2. Or there were some 3s that were playing a lot of time last year. And it's like, how can this team be this deep? And we're making these statements like, oh, this is the greatest team in my lifetime, great on paper, mind you. But now what it has to have happen is they got to get it done, and they got to get they just got to go in. They just got to take over these stadiums. And I'm talking about a couple of occasions, obviously November 11th and Penn State. The Michigan State game could be problematic. Just be that environment, and even the Nebraska and the Minnesota game, that could be tough. So you know what, they still got to make it happen. But I've never seen, beyond all the film and beyond all the stats, and when you look at the depth chart of what this accomplishment, it's the character kids, and you see them every Monday. You're at every presser down there, John. You see more kids in front of you than I do, and they're all good. They're all like, wow, that kid's impressive. Wow, he's he's grounded. It's the same thing, and that hasn't always been the case. Following this program.
That very, very well. There's no question about that. And speaking of character, and speaking of mutual friends, we have another one who is coming on with us in the latter part of this broadcast. That would be one Barry Gallagher. Do we have Barry ready to join us? There he is. Barry Gallagher, a prolific author of Michigan materials. He's, I think, on his 10th book about the Wolverines, about some aspect of Michigan football. Barry, it is great to have you here with us tonight.
Well, John, after the ordeals that I had with my computer, I'm certainly thrilled to be here. Absolutely. I could see you guys. I know you were having an energetic conversation about all the topics that I knew you were going to be talking about. And so I will watch it again later to hear everything that I missed. But I'm just really excited. John, actually, this is my 10th book. I've written 4 books, non-football, education, motivation and stuff, but this is number 5 for Michigan football, and I am so excited about this book because, first of all, it's about Michigan football, which is a passion of mine, but it's about somebody that, he's only a few years older than me, but I have admired and watched from a distance the career of Lloyd Carr, and I've had the opportunity to meet him a few times, and he's just class. He's always been class, and I've just learned so much about him that I can go back and show you notes that I had from July of 2019 where I first started thinking about this book. I just didn't know if there would be enough there to tell a good story, and boy, was I wrong.
Yeah, well, that's great. Tell me this. What about your interactions with Lloyd in the making of this book? How did you interact with him? What was your experience there?
Well, the experience was very convoluted, to tell you the truth, because I've never really spoke with Lloyd at length for any time, just a few minute conversations here and there. We did get a chance to speak once when he helped us honor a kid that he recruited from Romeo High School, Phil Webb, who played in 84 to 87. Phil was a great kid. And Lloyd came to the dinner that night that we had in Romeo, and he spoke about Phil, even though he wasn't his position coach, he recruited him.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, everybody in that room knew that Lloyd Carr knew Phil Webb as a player, but more importantly, as a person. And that was amazing. But Rich Hewlett, who wrote the foreword to this book, played for Lloyd, and 4-year letter winner, 2 letters on offense as a quarterback and 2 letters on defense. Not too many guys have done that.
Yeah. He started in the 79 Michigan-Ohio State game, Rich Hewlett.
First game he ever started.
Yep.
Well, that's a little bit of pressure, don't you think?
Yeah, that was a surprise that he snuck in there. That was when Wangler and BJ Dickey were in the
that was a tough game.
Yeah.
Tough game. But Rich helped me get in touch with Lloyd. And he's the reason this happened. And I drove to Riverview, Michigan last week to find out about this special town that Lloyd grew up in and loved so much. I spent some time with a very good friend of Lloyd's. They've known each other over 30 years. Jeff Spergalis, who used to coach at Dearborn Fordson. And then he coached later at Riverview, and he helped turn that program around after some hard times. And they've been successful for a long, long, long time, but they hit a hard spot. He got him out of it. He was just so proud to tell me about the town, about Lloyd. And he took me to the park. There's a park named after Lloyd Carr right across the street from the high school. So Lloyd played ball there as a kid. And they renamed it after him. I can't remember the name of the mayor. But when he decided that they needed to name this park after Lloyd Carr, they did not ask for his permission.
Yeah, because he probably
was afraid he would say, "Oh no, I don't need that."
Right.
So they just said, "We're going to name the park after you, Coach. If you want to come to the ceremony, you're invited." But the sign's going up.
Yeah,
it's awesome. So then, last Thursday, I met with Lloyd. It was originally going to be lunch. And I told Rich, I said, "Rich, how is that going to work? I go out to lunch with Lloyd Carr in Ann Arbor. Am I going to get a word in edgewise? How's this going to go?" he says, well, there's some places you can go with him, and they kind of let him have his space. He said, so it should be fine. Well, then when he texted me just before we met in the morning, he said, Barry, we're going to meet at the house. So he gave me the address, and up I went and knocked on the door. He was already there, actually, and he had a greeter with him. It was Parker the dog. And so it was me, Lloyd, and Parker the dog for almost 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And John, I told you on the phone Saturday that this was a dream come true, to tell you the truth. And again, he's not that much older than me, but you know what he's accomplished is just amazing. To have that time with him right there, he didn't have a cell phone, he didn't have any devices. He was 100% in the moment, speaking with me, and like I told you, he's a wonderful person to talk with because he makes you feel important and valued. But he's not a great person to interview because he totally flipped things on me. I would ask him a question, and then he would say, well, Barry, where did you go to high school? And then we just got to talking, and it was like tennis. I'd hit him with something, then he'd talk it back to me. And we went back and forth like that for almost 2 hours. And I came away knowing him because I've read everything that's written about him. I've watched videos. I know Lloyd Carr on paper pretty well. I know his record. I know what he did at Michigan. But just talking with him, mano a mano, was just a whole nother level of communication and understanding of what made that guy tick.
Yeah.
And
we will be very interested to see how that translates into your book. I know for a fact that he doesn't necessarily like the spotlight turned on him because I wrote a big feature story for the Wolverine one time on Lloyd Carr entitled The Gentleman General. And the next time I met him in his office, he points a finger at me and gets that stern look on his face and says, you don't listen very well, because he didn't want a story on him done. But maybe the most poignant interaction I ever had with Lloyd, and there were some fiery ones and there were some, but we were sitting in a tunnel at Michigan Stadium that he'd agreed to sit down and talk about different great teams of his. He was talking about the 2016 and how that could have easily been just like the 97 team and how close it came. And he sat there and his eyes welled up with tears because he hurt so badly that they got that close in 2006 and couldn't quite finish the job. But, it is it's an experience to talk with him. Tom, I'm sure you've had a couple of experiences with Lloyd yourself.
Yeah, it's like the first Big Ten media days. We did the roundtables. This was in Chicago at the old Conrad Hilton. You got the little tables in your and admittedly I was a little bit nervous because I had never done that. I had been away from this media thing. I got Lloyd Carr literally one-on-one, and it's just like Barry talking about. He started asking questions about me. I got it's like this is awkward here. Because I introduced myself. It's really good, and that's an art to do. That's right out of a Dale Carnegie seminar. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you put it on the other person. But I think I think what this man has gone through. He's lost his grandson, tragedy, and lost his grandson to cancer, and then he's lost his wife, and he's so giving when it comes to the Mott Children's Hospital and all those things. And yet we saw, like John talked about. I mean, I was a victim of one of those stares when we were doing those press conferences over there at Chrysler in the room closet, just asking him about Michigan State. It's like blaring at you. I got that part, and he was tough to coach for. He's very demanding on his coaching staff. However, it's like Barry said, this is a genuinely great man, and I think he's very caring. And you talk about a player's coach. Remember at that Michigan State game, the 2001, they deserve better. I mean, he's talking from his player's perspective, not his own perspective. That's a winning formula in my book.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So Barry Gallagher, why this book now? And in this process of putting it together, do you feel like maybe Lloyd Carr was underappreciated at Michigan?
I do. I absolutely do think he was unappreciated. The reason it's why now is because of that exact reason. I don't think anybody understands the level of accomplishment that he had, not just as a head coach, but as an assistant to Bo for 10 and Mo for 5. 28 years on the sidelines in Ann Arbor. Only one man, well, two men. Cliff Keene was an assistant for 33 years and a hell of a wrestling coach. And then Benny, 31 years, but only 10 as a head coach. So it's time. In fact, I had Rich Hewlett in an email as soon as I said a book about Lloyd Carr. He was on the road. He's traveling. He goes all over the country. He's a great lawyer. Boom. He was on the phone that night. He said, Barry, this is going to be something, because he knows I've written other books. He's helped me with a couple things. And he just said, it's time. I said, oh, it's past time. Yeah. So it's just been fun doing the research. And, John, I like to do the numbers. I like to dig a little deeper and see things that other people maybe haven't seen before. Coach Carr, he was intrigued by my military career, and I did not know this. He spent 2 years in ROTC at the University of Missouri.
Yeah, before he transferred to Northern. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he told me that he was in his ROTC classroom on the Friday that John F. Kennedy was shot. And he said it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so
I'm sure
we had some, we just kept going. There were so many things that we just touched base on, this and that and the other thing. But it's just because the book needs to get out, because his record stands for itself. And his biggest critics mostly are people who have never coached anything or led an organization and tried to do really, really hard stuff.
Yeah. Good. Tell the folks where and when they can actually get this book of yours. Those that want to dig a little deeper into the career and the thoughts of Lloyd Carr at this point.
Well, the book is sitting in my computer, which I'm viewing on right now, and it is 99.9%. I was waiting for one thing from the Bentley Historical Library this afternoon for permissions on a couple of pictures I wanted to use that weren't part of the vast collection that Bob Kalmbach and Sarah Stillman left, which everyone can use those pictures with just minimal permission arrangements. But there are a couple of pictures. Staff in 1980 is a classic. And then his picture with the 1997 championship team, the season picture before they started on their mountain climbing journey.
Very good.
Those are two pictures that I'm just not certain about. If I don't find out by tonight, I'm going to just pull them out. I have a couple other pictures I can use. Not as good, but still they'll help tell the story. And when I punch the button, it's going to be on Amazon. Kindle, people can download on Kindle, instantly almost. Right. And then it'll take a couple of days to get the book, the paperback in the mail. It's going to be in the MDen, hopefully within a week. Scott wants it yesterday, and I'm going to get it over there as fast as we can. So those are the three primary ways that people will be able to get the book: Kindle, Amazon, print copies, and of course the MDen.
All right, very good. Well, we will keep an eye out for that book and delve more into the life and times of Lloyd Carr. We're going to close this thing out by getting, as our weekly habit is, Tom's take on some aspect of Michigan athletics. Tom, what do you have for us?
Yeah, I'm just gonna double down. Yeah, I probably seep this out through our videos leading up in the off season. I'm gonna make, as we're on the season on the brink here, I'm gonna make a two prediction element here, twofold. One, Michigan's gonna win the national championship. Okay, I'm locking in on that. And J.J. McCarthy will win the Heisman Trophy. Okay, so those two things are going to happen. In my prediction, estimation, that's what I think is going to happen.
All right. Then no better time to say that than the first week.
You gotta do it at the start, right? I can't do it once a season. It's it's like betting on a game.
There you go.
I'm going to bet before the game. I'm betting before the season starts. J.J. McCarthy is gonna wow the hell out of Hale. I mean, the kid out in USC is pretty good. He's he's trying to win it 2 times in a row. But you watch, he's gonna win. He's the guy. I mean, there's Blake Corum, obviously Donovan Edwards. Those are 2 viable candidates. But it's JJ is going to win and there might be 2 candidates from Michigan in there. And that's possible. There might be 5 guys in there and 2 of them from Michigan.
Mark it down. You heard it here first. Tom Crawford has Michigan winning the national championship. J.J. McCarthy, Heisman Trophy. There you are. Fantastic job, Tom. Thanks very much to our special guest, Barry Gallagher, for being here and talking about his new book on Lloyd Carr, soon to be out on Amazon and several other venues. Look for that. Thanks, guys, and we will do this all again next week.
All right.